Hello, world. Good morning, good evening, and good night. We are fully international here. My name is Garrett Sussman, Director of Marketing of iPullRank, and we are doing the future of conversational search and AI agents. How do you market to a machine? I am super hyped for this conversation. We've got three experts in their fields. They will all be speaking at SEO Week, which is the end of April in New York. If you haven't bought tickets yet, tomorrow is actually the last day to get your early bird pricing. So just go to SEOweek.org. But I'd like to introduce them. Today, I am joined by Dawn Anderson. She is the principal consultant and managing director at Birdie. Dan Petrovic, who is the managing partner at Dijon. We had a conversation about pronunciation, but I'm not even going there today. And Mr. Mike King, the CEO and founder of iPullRank, leading the way in innovation when it comes to generative AI, SEO, and content strategy. We're going to have a fun conversation. Throw in your comments in the chat. I think everybody is here. We got a hard stop at 45 minutes in, so we're going to try to set some time for questions and answers, but we are getting organic. Let's do this. Everybody get off of mute. I want to start talking. And so just dive into this conversation. The current state of SEO. What major shifts and innovations in natural language processing and information retrieval have you seen the past couple of years? Where are we at, Dawn? You are in academic land. Start us off.
Well, first and foremost, I have to say that whilst I am in academic land, I'm also, every day I work as a consultant for SEO. So it's like I'm in academic land because I'm a great believer that every innovation at search engine starts in academia first. Because a lot of them, because obviously search engineers don't just appear from nowhere, they appear from education and then they go and work for search engines. So for me, the things that are happening are pretty crazy. I was just recently watching an intro to a talk at an IR conference called SIG IR, I think it was, where Martin de Rijk and a bunch of other fellow academics, Martin de Rijk is massively respected in the IR world. He was talking about the shift to generative AI. And effectively he was saying, look, this is not just a new, like an adaptation of search engines and search. This is literally a full and utter rebuild of how information retrieval works. It's like starting from the ground up again and just literally changing how it works. Obviously, we've got all these new, we've got like this new modern BERT as well. We've got the Titans thing that's just come in from Google. And obviously, we've got DeepSeek. Everybody's talking about that. So just massive speed. We've got all these leaks going on and Dan diving into, Mike diving into those. So we've got a lot of change happening. It's really fast. How we keep up, I've kind of no idea a little bit.
How you keeping up, Mike?
I'm listening to Dawn. No, I mean that is true, but also I just spend a lot of time on archive. I follow a lot of these engineers and also researchers. I'm just reading a ton, and it's incredibly difficult to keep up. Like, even if you just look at DeepSeek specifically, in the last week, there's been so many things built on top of that. And it just came out like the week before. So it's crazy how fast things are happening. But it's all really interesting. So it's great if you're like a really curious person, also have like some technical understanding. But even if you don't, I think that there's a lot of just cool ideas being presented here as well. So, just look at any of these papers. A lot of these people are on Twitter. They're on the various other social channels. And they're all sharing really interesting things.
And to that point, we're seeing this transition, right, Dan? Like where AI agents are the talk. We're starting to see this transition in terms of how they potentially could become gatekeepers to the relevance in search. And you've been doing a lot of work kind of looking at that. What direction do you think we're going in?
Well, one thing I struggle with these days is just to speak plain language so people can understand me. And like I don't even know how to phrase my answer to be, comprehensible. But where my efforts are sort of in practical side of things, measuring, tweaking, hacking, exploiting. We had a quick chat yesterday, you and I, and we covered some of that. briefly. Essentially, I see myself as somebody who takes the technical side of it and translate into practical insights. So I'm very busy right now with measuring representation, but also automating everything that could be automated. So I don't forget the bread and butter SEO. I think a lot of the technical stuff that we do is still valid. This industry is not shifting away that much. But what I like to do is I like to go to sleep and 4 or 5 machines doing things. So I wake up in the morning and some of it is great, some of it is rubbish. I got to restart. But sometimes you forget that something's been running and you come back to it and it's like a wealth of things that it's done for you. And you're like, should I set something in motion? But then you do, and then you're so glad you did. This is where I'm at. This is what my mindset is. Do things that do stuff in the background for you, makes money, makes value, generates goodness while you're busy focusing on creative things and developing new stuff. That's where we're at. Stuff's happening in the background, doing all the boring work while you can think creatively.
Mike?
No, I mean, I think that's like what people are imagining when they talk about agents, right? Like this idea that you can broadly define some things and then like have it just do them. So I love, first of all, you know, I love all the stuff you've been doing. Like I'm in your DMs all the time. Like, what is that? What is this cool thing? And, you know, just like trading ideas with you. So I'm eager to see what is going to happen when this stuff becomes just a little bit more accessible. And obviously things like, you know, the ChatGPT and DeepSeeks of the world are quite accessible. And then everyone's building integrations with them and so on. Like I'm seeing a lot of people talking about how to leverage all this stuff with Zapier to basically orchestrate a lot of different things. But I want to see like the common person doing what you're describing in all these different domains. I think that's going to be like the short-term future of what we're doing.
Do you know, I think that comes from an education piece, because I think there's a lot of people in the SEO world that are talking about all of these things, LLMs and regression modeling and so on and so forth, but they really don't actually know how to do any of these things. There's all sound bites, little, you know, I'll throw in this word and I'll come out with something that sounds good, but they actually don't have a clue. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of education needed to actually bring people up to speed and so show them things like scikit-learn. Because when I found that, I was like, oh my God, this is easy. I can just pick all these models and like just train something and test things and, you know, and so on and so forth. But, you know, before I'd come across that, you are just fumbling around in the dark a lot of the time. I think there's a hell of a lot of education for people that are maybe less technical, particularly those that are kind of still hanging on to a lot of the past things like the linkaholics out there, that haven't necessarily moved on, if you like. But yeah, I think there's just a big piece of education needed over this next few years, really. I think the industry's going through, I mean, you'll remember, of course, all of you will remember, but remember when everybody was getting hit with manual penalties back in 2011, 12, when Penguin hit, and a lot of people left the industry because they couldn't adapt. And I think that will happen again now if we're not careful. A lot of people need to really dig in and just learn up, if you like.
Yeah, and there's two sides of the question, right? Because like to Mike's point, you know, there's the consumer behavior. When are people going to use this, both the consumers and the SEOs? And I guess my question, like we were thinking about, is how quickly is this going to change, and how important is it for SEOs to actually prepare, like, you know, future-proof their content? I mean, Dan and I were talking about this, and he's been talking about like structured data and whether or not, you know, there's this debate right now whether that's actually valuable for, you know, the AI agents, the APIs, in terms of how they're going to future like consume data and whether that's more efficient.
I think to Dawn's point, it's all a function of education, right? Like we know, and I think, you know, the people on this call have been pretty loud about this, especially in the last couple of years, that Google's gone semantic like 12 years ago. But SEO still operates on the lexical model. Like almost all of our tools are still just counting the presence of keywords and telling you to use the keywords more. Like, so the fact that that hasn't been absorbed by this industry shows you how slow things move, unless it's like just kind of spoon fed to them, right? Like I think if there had never been, you know, metrics around like all these kind of entertainment metrics like domain authority and URL rating and so on and so forth, people would still be just talking to us about a toolbar page rank that no longer exists. So I think it has to be made easy. And there also needs to be tooling that like aligns with where we need to go. Otherwise, we have this whole subculture of like Python SEO, where it's these like really, you know, smart people, or at least people that know enough to code to be able to like figure some of these things out. But then the broader SEO community is still doing what it always did and still following these kind of obsolete best practices.
Well, I think also what tends to happen in the SEO world is people treat pages as though they live in isolation. It's like, hey, what's the keyword for this page? Everything's like this page. They kind of forget that it's not just about the power is from the connection of the pages. That's it. The power is the connection of all of the things. You know, they don't treat a whole site like the quality comes from the whole site. That everything comes from everything that it's connected to, whether it be like, you know, the notion of approximate nearest neighbors. I was doing quite a bit of stuff just recently with nearest neighbors algorithm, like as part of my master's, I'm just doing like stuff with classification regression models. And when you think about the concept of nearest neighbors, really that's everything that's linked together. You can think of it in, you know, in a linked node sense with pages. And I think people have just not even ever moved on. Every tool out there is like literally about a page as an individual, keywords on the page. So I think we just need to take that broader perspective, and I think things will change really quickly now. Maybe 2-3 years, the industry is just going to be different.
Well, to that point, how are you all thinking about measurement? To your like the fact that we're moving to conversational search, things are getting more complex. Mike's talking about the tools. Like, how do we measure performance of what we all do?
Traffic, still traffic and conversions. Like, what is still the money? It's still just the money at the minute. You know, it's like, sorry,
Yeah, I agree with that.
so fundamental. It's just literally still comes down to traffic and money.
I agree with that. I think what Garrett is kind of trying to get at though is that there are more intermediate metrics that we can be considering, right? Like so, you know, even like what you're saying, Dawn, where it's like things are being considered on a site level. Well, what site level metrics do we have for analysis aside from like a domain authority, right? Like I think that we need to introduce more of those sorts of things. And I think we got some information on, you know, a lot of what Google looks at from a site level, from both the leak that, you know, Dan and I looked at, and also the exploit that Mark Williams Cook found, where there's things like the site quality metric, site focus scores, things like that. I'm a huge proponent that a lot of those measures need to be surfaced in whatever ways we can. Like obviously a lot of them are based on user interaction, so we can't really, you know, have approximations of them, but something like a site focus score, we absolutely can. So I would love for our SEO tools to have more of that stuff. But in the meantime, you know, I think people like those on this call are coming up with their own things to look at that kind of replicate what we know from our own education. So I would just love for that stuff to become more widely available to people.
And as we transition from like traditional SEO to more conversational, you know, the use of AI agents, one of the questions or one of the things that Dan has brought up is now all of a sudden we need to start marketing to the machines. You talked about like kind of, you know, how we originally started at marketing to machines and then to people and to machines. Dan, can you kind of speak to like how this has come full circle?
Yeah, full circle indeed. Because when I started SEO 2001, I guess, it was all about, you know, little hacky techniques and, you know, modifying this and modifying that, trying to cheat the algorithm. And then we kind of bought the story from Google, do what's best for the user, publish great content. And that's where I kind of like semi-retired, because I was just bored with the whole thing. I like to manipulate, like to hack. So then suddenly, with this movement of accessibility of machine learning, it brought interest to the whole thing. And that meant that we can start to influence again. And it's very fertile ground for manipulation right now. It's very, very easy to get in, and it's not going to be always like that. I just noticed we've got some conversation going in the chat as well, and people been bringing up things like model distillation and using your own not private models, but like open source models. I just want to point out that there's two sides to the discussion, I suppose. One is, how do we adapt and modify what's, I don't think the transition will happen that quick from there's inertia in the consumers. People still want to go to Google, find the thing, buy the product and service and this and that. I think there's a lot of utility than the machine learning systems that are available to us now can provide. One example is, just today, I'm looking at 5 different websites, total 5 million pages, a very large publisher in Germany. And I'm ingesting their sitemaps, getting the slugs from the URLs, vectorizing them, building embeddings, vector embeddings, and finding similar pages by topic using the URL segments. So immediately, the 5 websites, at a glance, using TensorFlow Projector, I can see the shape, the semantic shape of different websites. One is homogeneous. All the topics are more or less the same or very diverse. Some have clusters. Some do this. Some transform. And so at a glance, I can see the semantic shape of a website. It already tells a story. That's just one facet of doing this. And I'm not even using I'm not using large language models. Large language models are like a cherry on top. They digest the information for you. I think where people need to get into is classifiers. Dawn's touched on that.
Basic clustering.
Clustering, classification, and yeah, you can train and make your own little model. Doesn't have to be a large language model. It could be a model that does something very useful, like a classification task. I think that's what people focus should be, because it's so easy and so accessible right now to build your own stuff based on this.
So you bring up a really good point, and when you say like, hey, I can see the shape of this website from like a semantic perspective and what have you. I think what people miss out on, especially in the SEO space, is that Google has that top level look at all websites. And so you think you're tricking them by doing something, but it's like, no, they see it, not just like from the site and its content, also looking at the link graph and things like that. And it's been that way for a long time. And so then they wonder like, oh, why is my link building not working? Like Google sees that same pattern of links that you've built for this site and this site and this site and so on. So what I would love,
basic classification model. Is it spam? Is it not spam? Learn enough, and then it's spam. That's it.
And in fact, Dawn, if you try to get Gemini or GPT to, like, you give it a piece of content and you say, identify spots in this content where there's a good opportunity for a link, it'll return absolute garbage. It's just not specialized in that. It's a generalist model. And it's a hugely powerful model, but it's not good at the specific tasks.
It's not the right tool. Yeah.
I have a 50 megabyte model that pinpoints exactly where a link should go in text. And how is that model trained? It's trained on world's top blogs that I scraped and trained a little model on. Distillation. So what China is doing with GPT, that's great work. I've done distillation. Google's done distillation. They've done triple distillation. They're using but they use professor model, the teacher model, and the student model.
Did they use reinforcement? Are they not using reinforcement learning on DeepSeek? So it's a little bit like the bandit algorithms, like reward and punishment for doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing. I think that's what DeepSeek is using.
Absolutely. Reinforcement learning is the next big thing. I mean, it's been around for a very long time. People in robotics are all over it, but I think in general AI, people feel like this is the direction. I still feel like it's a bit of a dead end. I feel transformers are a dead end as far as general intelligence goes. Artificial general intelligence. I think some sort of evolutionary algorithm needs to be put in place to truly come to some sort of level of comprehension, sentience, and general knowledge. But I think we're going to get very far with what's been happening with reinforcement learning and what DeepSeek's demonstrated. But yeah, I have actually no problem with them distilling knowledge from GPT. Good for them.
What about Titans? You know, this seems, a few of these recent things seem like not just small leaps forward, because there's been a lot of things that have been very iterative improvements, small improvements over time. But with the likes of DeepSeek and this modern BERT and Titans, these feel like 3 really, really big leaps forward in a very short space of time after quite a period of, I don't know, I feel like these are laying the ground now for very fast, almost like hockey stick development, where we've been going up, 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 up. Now we're starting to like see a big lift up.
Yeah, I mean, China's motivated. They want to join the club. They want to become, you know, equals with developments in artificial intelligence. The US, they're willing to share, and you know, and I think they're going to get a lot of value. People are jumping on R1 and improving it and giving back the ideas. I think the world is collaborating on AI.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Well, if you remember when BERT first was kind of gifted to
Yeah.
the community, there was BERT for everything. You know, there was Sesame Street pictures everywhere, and there was just a BERT for every language. There was BERT that didn't require translating to English before it got translated into other languages, and that whole, like, if you like, internationalization of machine learning and large language models happened quite quickly from that, whereas that had been a little bit of a, that was very problematic for a long, long time, and still is to some extent, because programmers English, you know, that's the bottom line, isn't it? In the past, it's been known as programmers English because everything's been very much around the English language. So I wonder whether with R1 DeepSeek we'll see that again, like a, you know, everybody will jump in on, the whole community will just go absolutely nuts and start contributing all sorts.
Yeah, I hope it does, because you know, I think like Google was kind of dangling the carrot where they're like, hey, look at this deep research thing. You can't do this. And then like China comes out of nowhere, like, here, you can have it. So
Yep.
I think that's really cool that we're going in that direction. And again, I want to see our community capitalize on these things, because there's just so many use cases that that I don't think we've discovered yet, and two, some things that can just make what we've been trying to do as SEOs for so long make more sense and be a lot easier.
Well, my question for y'all, like the tools are there, but in terms of the Google search ecosystem, you know, mentioning DeepSeek, do you think Google has the moat to continue to dominate market share, or do you think this plays out? Okay, so how's this play out over the next few years from consumer search?
All right, let me be clear. I think that Google can win big picture long term just because they have the distribution channels, right? Like they've got multiple multi-billion user products that they can insert Gemini or whatever it is into. So like inevitably most people will end up using Gemini, but I don't think that they will necessarily have the best product. However, they can kind of sit back and watch what the best product is and then just incorporate it into whatever they have. And then they've also got their own chips, so they don't have to worry about paying NVIDIA like everyone else does. So I think they have a lot of advantages. And I think for search specifically, that it's going to be difficult to supplant them like broadly. We are seeing that, you know, traffic to Google is going down. It's not growing like it historically
Still
has.
like 90% though. Still, that's still quite a lot. 90%, isn't it?
Sure.
It's like
For sure. But like from a perspective of a business, they need to keep showing growth. I think things are going to get a little more difficult for them. Nevertheless, to your point, yes, 90%, it's still where you should focus for search. But we have to be mindful of the fact that, like, hey, maybe OpenAI comes up with something that dramatically better, and they're already growing. So it is going to change this landscape a bit more. But I think generally people are using it in an additive way, not necessarily being like, I'm abandoning Google wholesale. But I think what we're seeing with DeepSeek, again, it just shows that there is opportunity for someone else to come out of nowhere and have a chat GPT moment with a new product. Sidebar, I see Eli is in here. He had posted something about DeepSeek, like one of his friends or colleagues or whatever found an exploit in it, which was really interesting. So I don't know if y'all saw that, but I would encourage y'all to check it out.
It's very cool. I love it. I love what's been happening there. I think we're going to have a little surprise soon. The OpenAI Microsoft partnership seems like it's going to end up with an operating system that's LLM driven. So it's like, where's my files? Why isn't this working? Fix this driver thing. Basically, Her, the movie Her. So we've got Microsoft OpenAI partnership happening, and on the other side we have activated Google. The sleeper has awakened. So I expect big things coming out of Google. I mean, DeepMind still around. They're innovating. Something amazing is going to come out of that. But again, hoping for these delightful little things that are going to come out of garage type setups. DeepSeek's not exactly a garage setup, but little labs.
Comparatively, it is. I mean, what is it? 6 million? Was it 6 million versus X billions? It's like that is the garage of the modern day garage.
Although we're not really sure if they are being truthful about the amount of GPUs that they had available to them. I think that's sort of like back channel. They got
there are other concerns. There are other concerns as well with the DeepSeek, with the whole propaganda worries.
And to your point, Dan, I thought Apple Intelligence was going to do that too, but it seems like they completely fumbled the bag. Do you think they're even in the conversation? Same with like Meta?
Yeah, Apple's lost that moment. I think they had a chance, and then they sort of like squandered that.
Yeah, Apple no, but Meta definitely. I think Llama 3.1 was a huge leap forward, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to figure out their version of DeepSeek right now.
And they've got lots of things going on in the background as well. Lots and lots of different types of research, face and all sorts happening.
Yeah. By the way, DeepSeek is already stimulated OpenAI. If you chat to the classic GPT 4.0, it can reason. They don't say anything. They don't show the thinking. It reasons. They already implemented it. If you chat to it today, it's going to start putting. There's something new about it. So today I asked it to give me I gave it a table and I said, give me the percentages of these values, and it gave me the percentage, and I'm like, are you hallucinating? Did you just make these up? And I said, do the calculations properly in your real environment. And the calculations it did were exactly the same as what it outputted in a normal chat. And I'm like, how did you, what just happened? And then it gave me the reasoning process behind, and it was like, and I did this, and I estimated and I halved that, and so it came to the percentages. So OpenAI has implemented DeepSeek's sort of like thinking process, and I think it's really really interesting what happens next. Now that they're motivated as well.
One last thing I want to say on Meta is like, we can't forget that RAG came from them. So like they're like kind of a sleeping giant.
They do a lot of the foundational stuff that people then build on. The face stuff. They do a lot of really strong foundational stuff, and then gift it, and people build big things on it.
So what do you all think is Google's like priorities in IR, AI and like NLP for marketers and brands going forward? Like, what do you think we need to pay attention to for Google as SEOs over the next few years?
I think Google's the only company that values search.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is well. When I was at the European Summer School for Information Retrieval this year, It was funny because one of the actual lecturers, who's very well known in that space, she was saying that from an IR perspective, the IR world seemed to be very pleased when NLP started doing crazy hallucination things, because they all realized they still had a job. And that's the point. It's like NLP and large language models, that they do daft things on their own. So I think there is still a really good and important part of IR and search, and the knowledge graph part of it, the ontological element, the grounding, the fact checking, the guardrails and so forth. And I think that Google will still win out. Ultimately, they're going through some quality things this year. I think it was probably a good move. I know everybody thought that Prabhakar Raghavan was not great as head of search, but he's a brilliant engineer. And I think that was a good move of them moving him to innovation. I think that they will do amazing things, even though it's been a bumpy year for us as an industry. But yeah, I think that they'll come through it.
I think Google is focused on multimodality. I think they're going to find innovations there and making all this stuff like more real world, being able to, like Google Lens as an example, fantastic product. There's been many situations where I've been like walking down the street and seeing someone in an outfit, took their picture and then say, find me this shirt or something like that. I think that is like making search a more real world assistant, right? Like I think those sorts of things, we're going to see a lot more innovation there. And it's going to be one of the things that sets Google apart, just because they have such well-maintained and curated data for moving across those different modalities.
I think to that point, I'm really curious about the deployment from a consumer standpoint of Project Astra. I don't know how much you guys have been paying attention to that, but to your point, Mike, it's like the idea of kind of doing that visual search where Lens is a almost static interaction, whereas Project Astra is dynamic, where you share your screen and it can take in all of the inputs of what's going on, audio, visual, and really interact with search in that way. Now, my question is whether or not that'll be a Google Glass situation or we'll actually see consumer adoption. But I think to your point, that's like next level, where it's, and whether that's, some sort of wearable tech.
So you brought up, or somebody brought up the movie Her, and I've always felt like that is a good example of where the future of technology is going. Like I think we've had one view that looks like the movie Minority Report, where like everything is all up in your face and these crazy interfaces. I think the future is really where, the real world objects that you're dealing with are all somehow connected to these sorts of interfaces. And I think Google is truly trying to create like that Star Trek computer thing, where I can just like pick up this Weston thing that I'm holding here and be like, hey, tell me about this, or tell me where to get these clothes, or tell me anything about this, because they have all that information somewhere. So I don't think it's a Google Glass thing. I think there's going to ultimately be some sort of like, I don't know, like these interfaces that are just built into everything. And then you can just do this like ambient computing, rather than it being like there's one device, there's one camera, there's your phone or whatever. I think it's just going to be like it's built into everything.
Like an omnipresent.
Yeah.
And I mean, that doesn't even go into, we're not going to get into data privacy, but I did want to take one question that we can kind of ramble on till we get to time. Because we got, a little more than 5 minutes. Saj asked, do we think there's a massive opportunity for SEOs and marketers to move beyond page SEO and instead capture share through owned conversational AI systems? How are you guys thinking about that?
Well, that's something I've been busy with, and influencing and monitoring conversational and chat representation. I think coming up with a good balanced metric that tells us how we're performing is probably one of my first things that I'm gonna do. I try to share on multimodality that Mike mentioned earlier. I try to share the comment in the chat, but I got blocked. Maybe they think I'm a spammer. basically go to aistudio.google.com and click on a little microphone icon there on the left, stream real time. You can basically experience the multimodality right now. And like you can actually stream your video and share screen and things, and it can in real time interact with you. It's amazing. It's sci-fi.
That's cool. Yeah, like they're deep learning, or not deep learning, but it was like an educational product that they're rolling out as well that was multimodal, where it was like a search page, but not the blue links. It was like text, summary, and then like the videos, and there's a lot of potential there. It really comes to, as Mike I think mentioned earlier, this idea that conversational search, and Dawn mentioned it too, as like a supplement to the way that we're used to searching. It's just people, SEOs who are so scared that you're going to lose all this traffic from AI overviews. It's just we're going to be searching differently with multiple platforms, and that
it's a repeat of featured snippets from years ago. It's literally just another facet of search that is an opportunity. So yeah, it's an opportunity to think of it not as something negative, as something positive.
Did y'all see that they have they're testing a version of deep research in the AI overviews?
Mm-hmm.
That is insane. And for anyone who's on the call, I didn't see it. It's like deep research. What it'll do is it'll look at let's say 50 web pages to then give you a very detailed summary. And so that experience can be very long, right? And so Michael Glavick, who used to be on our team, he shared his experience of it. And it was basically the deep research experience in an AI overview. So the AI overview was scrolling for multiple screens, and it had 50 or so citations in it.
And it's going to be interesting. I don't know if you've seen Glenn Gabe's been writing about, but how they have their whole program where they're inserting links back to the searches in people's content, which you need to opt out for, and turning the whole internet into a Google ecosystem. That's yeah, I mean, maybe that's to about the deep research. That's where we end up going, where it's both e-commerce consumer sending you to products, sending you back to Google, sending you to deep research, but you're all within Google's net.
Feel like we didn't cover agents enough. I think we kind of covered a lot. My God, I want to pin that maybe for the conference. We discussed that agents. You know how we said my agent is going to talk to your agent. They're going to work things out. It's going to book the flights. Going to order stuff, food for the party. It's going to be amazing.
My algorithm versus your algorithm.
Yeah, and so we have the knowledge as SEO industry. We have the knowledge of having things done neatly, the feeds, the structured data, the clean pages, the SEO hygiene. We already naturally fall into that. All this conversational search and multimodality, everything is going to be based on nice, clean, structured data. And there's our role right there, to organize things and make it accessible for the agents.
Here's my problem with that statement, though. The SEO community is going to devalue that role in AI. And I want everyone that, I talk to understand that we have been the janitors of the web for so long, right? Who did social metadata? Us. We don't even manage social channels, right? I mean, your agency may if you have both, but we shouldn't have been the people doing social metadata. We basically fixed everyone's page speed because Google said it was going to give a rankings boost. That's not necessarily what we should be doing. And performance is another area that people spend a lot of money for, but they came to us for it and we did it for a lot cheaper. So I don't want the SEO community to fall in this trap of doing all this AI work for pennies. I think this is a good time for us to kind of reinvent our category and define what we're going to be moving forward so that we can actually capitalize on this and stop being the janitors for the internet.
And that is a beautiful segue into the end of this, and where April, all three, these are the conversations that we've been having anytime I talk to any of these folks. What we were talking about, Dawn and I, right before, or Dan yesterday, like these are the conversations that are going to happen at SEOweek.org, which the whole theme is the next chapter of search. And to Mike's point, it's elevating this whole category of SEO to something that's more meaningful, more important to marketers and to brands, so that we should have a seat at the table always. It should start at this sort of industry. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. Big thanks to the panelists. Y'all are freaking so fun as hell to talk to, excuse my language, but it's just, it's hard not to go down rabbit holes. To Dan's point, you know, we intend to talk about AI agents. You start talking about information retrieval, and next thing you know, you're talking about DeepSeek and Project Astra and you know, structured data, all this stuff. Anyway, SEOweek.org. Tomorrow's the last day for early bird tickets, so you can meet all four of us are going to be there speaking. You know, check out. So as Dawn mentioned, she does the work as well. If you want to hire her consulting, reach out to Dawn, reach out to Dan, DeJohn. Obviously, I pull rank. Any parting last words from any of y'all before we sign off?
We have superpowers. Use them.
There you go. Thank you all. My name's Garrett of iPull Rank, and hopefully we'll see you in person in New York City at the end of April. Sound good? Okay, go buy your ticket. Go. Bye.
See you all.